Wow, great. Everything's happening as it should. Welcome, everyone. We're glad you're joining us today for our March 2024 program of League of Women Voters, Lincoln-Lancaster Lunch and Learn. We're glad you can join us today for our program to hear about what's happening in our Nebraska unicameral. We're delighted to hear from two League members who follow and study the issues before the legislature, Joanna Lindberg and Rachel Gibson. I'm Terry Hendrickson. I chair the Lunch and Learn Program Committee. Thanks to all who have muted their audio and turned off video. I want to let you know that we will be taking questions following the presentation by our speakers today in the chat. We don't verbally ask questions. I'll just read them as they're entered in the chat. I will mention now early that if you're opening your chat, you'll see a link to a Lunch and Learn survey. I'll tell you a little bit about that now before we get the program started. So we're interested in feedback for the Lunch and Learn Committee and the work that we do. We want to know how we're doing with programming. We'd like your input on future programs that you'd like to hear from, speakers as well. So just click on that link in the chat. You can either complete the survey after, which I would recommend. It'll just take 3 to 5 minutes, and thanks in advance to those who've already weighed in. But we'd like all who join us for these to share their input and feedback with us as we aim to do the best for you. So let me tee up today's topic and speakers. Again, we're joined by two League of Women Voters of Nebraska leaders, Rachel Gibson and Joanna Lindberg. Gibson is Vice President of Action for the Nebraska League, and Lindberg serves as the government co-chair. As you may know, the Nebraska League develops position statements on specific bills each legislative session through extensive research and member input. Today, they'll provide us with the latest on the status of League's priority bills and how we as Nebraskans can get involved. Rachel, Joanna, thank you for joining us today. Let's get started.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction and for the invitation to be here. Again, my name is Rachel Gibson. I am the Vice President of Action for the State League, and I am delighted to have Joanna here, who is a member of the government action team for us to help kind of walk through what's happening in the legislature. So Joanna, I don't know if you want to do any introduction before I jump in. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and jump in then. As mentioned, please put questions in the chat. One of the things that I absolutely love about the legislature is that this is what's happening in our state, and particularly with the League, we have people everywhere who are curious about what's going on. So I want to make sure we're talking about the things that you're curious about. So please feel free to hop in there. Before we jump in and actually talk about a handful of bills that we're really paying attention to this session, I just want to give some context. I know many of you, because you're League members, many are, know what the League does, but for those of us who might be guests joining, the League of Women Voters of Nebraska is a nonpartisan organization that looks at issues. And sometimes people will look at that and they say, nonpartisan, well, you have a stance on this issue. And yeah, we do, because we take stances on policy, not politicians. And so we don't endorse candidates or anything like that, but we do talk to our members, look at what's happening in our state, do some analysis, do some research, and determine what policies are serving the citizens of Nebraska and what ones maybe aren't so much. So that's the context of where the action policy piece of the League comes from. So we have about 400 members across the state. We have about 35 members on our action teams. There's 6 different teams, which are fantastic. We have several directors and co-directors. And what we do basically is look at state level initiatives and legislation. So during the legislative session, in the first 10 days when all the bills come out, all of our action teams get together and we look through all of those. This year was 1,300 or so pieces of legislation. And then again, in those action teams, we determine what is kind of the most important, most pressing, things that are happening on the ground, do some research on those, and then write position statements. This year we wrote about 35 around there. I see Diane Bystrom, who's a fantastic part of our team, who reviews all of them. So we wrote about 35, and then we actually went and testified at the Capitol itself on about 20. So that's some context about what we do. After we get past all those hearings and position statements, we really focus on, staying up with what's happening on those bills. We'll send action alerts when things are happening, because as you may know, there's a process, of course, that our legislature goes through, different rounds of debate, different votes. So we stay on top of that and share updates as we know them. So Joanna, is there anything you want to add about what we do kind of at the state league level? No? Okay. All right. Well, so we'll jump right in then with the bills that we're going to cover. And we have, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, around 8 that we'd like to highlight. We'll take turns talking about those. And Joanna will actually get us kicked off with our very first bill. We're going to go in chronological order here, which is
Women's League,
LB
Women League of Voters.
Oh, okay.
So Joanna, I'll turn it over to you to talk about LB 20.
Okay, I'm ready. Unmuted. It's good to be here. I'd love to see all these people trying to follow our legislature. It's just a very interesting session, a shorter one, but just an incredible amount of bills. The one I'm going to start with is LB 20, and it's a bill that would restore voting rights for people once they have completed their full sentence after committing a felon. And we're improving slowly. For the past 18 years, a 2-year wait has been the law. And it's kind of confusing for the offenders. They don't exactly, well, so when does the 2-year wait end? And then the Election Commission has to verify that they have successfully completed. So what this LB 20 would do is restore their rights after they completed. I mean, the probation officer could say goodbye, you now can vote, and you could go register. It's kind of interesting, the history. In 2005, Senator Shimmick was the one who introduced the 2-year wait, because what we had was a 10-year wait, and then you had to request to go in front of the Pardons Board. And so that only 1% of individuals, 1.5% of individuals actually did that back in 2000 or prior to 2005. So they came up with a 2-year wait, which was kind of unfortunate. They wanted no wait, but they, as a compromise to be sure they would get this passed, and so they passed it, and then Governor Heinemann vetoed it, but it sustained a 36-11 override by the legislature. But to show you, in contrast, half of European countries allow incarcerated people to vote. Canada, Israel, and South Africa have ruled it unconstitutional to ban voting based on conviction status. I think it's going to pass. I mean, people that are in as part of a coalition for voter restoration feel that there's enough votes, but it never hurts if you could let your senator know that LB 20 is an important bill that gets people feeling like they're a part of the community again. It's a great message for their children and for their families to see someone coming out and being able to vote and being an invested member of our community.
Joanna, that's so interesting about the stats you gave comparatively. I think maybe I read that and I forgot that. That's interesting. Can you also talk a little bit about, so that's one of the earlier numbers, so 20. So it was actually introduced last session. I'm wondering if you can talk about how it's kind of come back around and floated to the top again. I believe Raybould has made it her
Right.
bill.
Right. It's been 18 years as this 2-year wait. And Senator Wayne was encouraged to do this last session. And, it got out of committee, but did not get voted on the floor. So there's a lot of support, a lot of people involved in wanting this to happen for our people that are coming off of probation or parole.
I see a question in the chat here, which is actually a good note for us. Hadn't thought of this. Thanks for the suggestion, Renee. Talking about where each bill is in the process, and Larry asked specifically if LB 20 is on the floor. Last I have heard, it has been voted out of committee, but not scheduled. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I guess we still feel confident and, you know, but a call to your senator would definitely help.
Yeah, I think the name of the game at this time in session really is time, how much time is left. So even as you're saying, an email that says, hey, this is important to us, please, you know, we encourage that you ask the speaker when it's going to be scheduled is useful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Now,
All right, you've got the second one, Joanna, too.
Okay, so the second one is Senator Linehan's bill, and she would like to change provisions for removing your name from a petition. It's called LB 861. The league voted or testified against it, and they felt the process to remove a name should be in parity with the process to add a name. So the current process is you have an affidavit, you sign it, and have a notary public, you know, approve it, and then you send it to the Secretary of State's office. What she would like is just for me to sign, you know, write a letter and send it to the Secretary's office. It's one thing we thought, you know, they're so strict about voter ID, but to not have any way then to make sure this is a secure letter, that it isn't just somebody who's created, you know, you could have a big campaign that would be well funded that might put pressure on people to do this or might falsely send these in. So that's our position, and it's LB 861. If you want to let your senator know about voting against this, I think it would help.
Yeah, and that one is interesting. The hearing was interesting on that. Senator Conrad was pretty supportive of this idea of being able to remove your name more easily. It was an interesting conversation, and I think there was talk of an amendment potentially added that would at least require the Secretary of State to verify the signatures on those letters. So just to the point Joanna made, that is more in line with, you know, how much we're concerned about voter ID and people actually being who they say they are. So it'll be interesting to see if that one comes out with or without that amendment. That might kind of tweak how the league feels about it, but we have to wait and see.
Okay, and I think I get a break. And
You get a break. It's my turn. Well, feel free to jump in if you've got something interesting to say. I'm going to take the next one. The next bill that we wrote on our healthcare committee or healthcare action team is LB 857, which is from Senator Dungan, who is a Lincoln area senator, and it is the Prenatal Plus program. This is a really interesting bill because Senator Dungan said as much in his open. He, after living through last session, said, what can we all agree on to actually make some positive difference in the state? And so he did a good amount of research and found this style of program in Colorado, I think also in Florida, but Colorado is really the one that he has shaped this after. And what it does is it's a program for really tailored towards pregnant mothers who typically have low birth weight babies, and low birth weight babies have a slew of comorbidities and things connected to that being low birth weight that are negative, that have long-term consequences. So this is looking at that and saying, okay, where are mothers that are at risk for low birth weight babies? And then what are, you know, research-based ways to improve their experience? So what this program does is basically with that targeted group of moms, it provides additional, you know, more than just your prenatal visits. So it had the ability to meet with a dietitian, the ability to meet with maybe a mental health care worker, and then a social worker or some sort of case manager that helps navigate all those different things. So it's really targeted for that group, aimed at helping those moms who typically have low birth weight babies. And in Colorado, the outcomes have been pretty impressive. He had some really great stats on how that there are fewer and fewer babies who are low birth weight, but then also the economic impact to the state. So that's one that it has made it through first round of debate, mostly very supportive. There were a couple folks who raised concerns about cost and making sure that this really is narrow and tailored to those moms who need it most. But it moved on to the next round, and then it is on the floor again today for select files. So hopefully this is one that can move forward and make a bit of a difference. So, and the league, of course, supports this because, you know, every person should have access to quality healthcare, and particularly those who need it most. And this is a great research-based way to do that. So anything you'd add to that, Joanna?
No, but what a good investment. of
Right.
money to assure we have kids. You know, when I was driving my a refugee family that we helped to their preschool daily, I noticed that the Millard bus system had 3 different vans bringing kids in that were handicapped, you know, and probably all at birth, some disorder happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a cost savings
Yeah.
above all.
Yep. Start early to address those issues. So,
Mhm.
well, you have the next one, Joanna, LB
Okay.
1321, which I am not jealous about trying to explain. So go for it.
This is my very, very, very favorite bill. It's so, so important. The Ombudsman Inspector General program was closed down because of the Attorney General's opinion that the powers given to the office were in violation of the Nebraska Constitution's provisions for separation of powers. Within days after that decision, August 16th, they closed access to data and to the child welfare system, the prison system. So it's been 7 months, and it's a program that assures accountability and oversight to the most important programs in our state to protect children and to protect adults. The Ombudsman program has actually been around. It's some history since 1971. That was a movement to start in states, having somebody look into the effectiveness of government and to provide transparency. Child welfare and corrections were added in 2013 and 2016. And they do an incredible report. If you want to go on the Nebraska Legislature.com and just see under legislative divisions, there's the ombudsman listed. It's one of 4 agencies within the legislature. And there's reports that will impress you what they've done to investigate issues that have happened over the years. An example would be the 62-page report of Nico Jenkins and how he was held in solitary confinement with no treatment or programming for 2 years before he was just let go without any planning or preparation. Then, you know, he murdered, I don't know, more than a few people. Another circumstances where at one of the facilities, it was a mental health people obviously are more work to care for people that have maybe aggressive tendencies, which Nico did. And this other man tried to take over the unit, and he was shot by the staff with 200 rubber bullets, some lodged into his skin. And so when the report was done, that all became public, and the request was and was in place, but it didn't get used at that time, is that mental health staff need to be on call to respond when somebody is totally out of control. And then there was the water quality for women at York, and a death of an inmate due to negligent health care. So, you know, we all need to, although I feel like it's likely to pass, this LB 1392, I think, yeah, if you want to just add that as one of the bills for your legislator to support. It is critical to the safety of individuals. Another one was child welfare, and 3 children committed suicide in 1 year. And then they make very professional recommendations. It's not necessarily a biased report, but it is a report filled with professional advice. And if, let's say you had a complaint or knew of a complaint, the complaints are for possible misconduct on behalf of the worker, or misfeasance, which I don't know, malfeasance I know, and violation of statute or regulations. So there's a phone number you can call in the mornings and make a complaint, and they are still accepting the complaints, but they cannot get into the jails and get the data until LB 1392 is passed. Senator Arch gets kudos for being a leader over this. He knows how important it is, and he has done exceptional things. He's written 2 bills, and the other bill, it's already passed, will set up a review committee that'll just be through January, kind of like an LR 298, to review how the law is written that makes it a problem for constitutional reasons. So I feel confident that it's headed the right direction, and we have great leadership.
Yeah. And you're right, Senator Arch, who's speaker, has really been focused on this issue, and he was previously the head of Health and Human Services Committee. So I think he probably saw some of this kind of firsthand of the impact of it. And there were a couple different bills. I think the one 1321 is one of them, and then there is 1392. And Joanna, maybe you can give us, I'm going to double check too, which one is the one that we feel like it's going to, I think it's 1321.
92. Well, 1392 is the one that's all the members of the executive board have signed on to it. Correct me if I'm wrong. That was my understanding. That was Arch's bill, and the other one maybe was Danielle Conrad's bill, which was a good bill, but we just need to get it passed, and there's clear support by the executive board of the legislative council to get that passed on the floor.
Yeah.
So this is Terry. I'm just going to jump in for a quick minute. I apologize because that was an absolute interruption. But as you're talking about these, we have a request in the chat. Please let us know where each bill is currently on the process. Is it in committee? Is it on the floor? And did we determine the Ombudsman Inspector General bill? Was that 1321 or 1392?
1392, and it's a priority bill, but it's not been scheduled to be heard on the floor.
And this one, yeah, I was going to say that it hasn't moved forward. I'm going to pull up and I'll drop in the chat as we go through the different bills so folks can see them right there. And then we'll also follow up with them. Actually, Joanna, I'm thinking it might be 1321. Let me see. 1392 is about foster care. So I'm gonna check up the 1321. That might have been my fat finger typing. If it was, I apologize. Yes, this is the one from Senator Arch. So I'll drop this one in there.
You're right. I am so sorry. Yeah, our testimony says 1321.
Joanna, how could you get all these numbers mixed up? There's only 1,300 bills to look at.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
No, that's tag team. This is teamwork at its finest. I think you've got the next one too. I believe that's McDonald's, and I'll look up the bill and drop it in the chat as well.
And all the bills we are referencing have our priority bills. So Senator Arch says that they would all get a chance on the floor. That is the plan.
That's the plan, but there's some interesting filibustering going on, so we'll see.
Right. So the last one that I'm going to talk to is Senator McDonald from Omaha's Bill 1357, and it prohibits camping on certain property owned by political subdivisions. And it's a bill that's really gotten the ire of Omaha individuals. The Douglas County Board had a hearing about it, and they wanted to make a statement against it. And a number, the St. Vincent de Paul Society in Omaha is located at Holy Family Church, 17th and Izzard, which is very close to Francis House and east downtown. And they have allowed some people to stay on the premises in their fenced area just for safety reasons. They gave them a ticket and it kind of explained what they would be expected if they stayed on the property, but it was during those very cold months. And there are people just tenting on the cement outside of that. So these homeless individuals did go down to the hearing for McDonald's hearing on the bill, and they have really been led by this director of St. Vincent de Paul. Her name is Lynch Sosa, and she said the people are not the problem. There's a symptom of a bigger issue, and it's we don't have enough affordable housing. She shared that in January of this month, they had 4,000 requests just in 1 month from people needing help with utilities, rent, and other expenses so they could stay in their homes. So this is a critical problem that the bill wants. If you post on a property that homeless cannot tent here, then that could, and you still do it, then you could be arrested. Or if you're warned that, verbally warned that you can't stay here and you don't leave, then you can be arrested. There's talk of fines if you are arrested, and we know these are people that don't have the money and could end up then arrested for not paying their fine, for, ending up in jail is probably what would be a consequence for most people that don't have cash, don't have any money to pay expenses. The hearing was February 29th, and it's a priority bill for Senator McConnell. It's LB 1357, and I don't believe it's scheduled, Rachel, for the floor.
Yeah, it was scheduled for a late hearing, which is usually a nod to this is probably not going anywhere.
Okay.
And the community response was huge. So no, it is still currently in committee. I don't even know if it's been execed on yet. So I imagine that one won't move forward, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
So there's a question about Senator McDonald, what does he want the bill to do? And from my listening, and you probably listened more closely than I did, Joanna, but in his open, he talked about the idea that there are no services available if people just tent anywhere. And so he is saying that he'd like to get them to a space where there are services available that are designated. The pushback on this was, first of all, Senator DeBoer asked, some people may not want services, and you're still criminalizing unhousedness. And another was, if they don't have the ability to get there, the answer is then to potentially be in jail, which would be using county resources and whatnot as well. So the idea, or at least how Senator McDonald presented it, was he wanted to kind of organize folks in a certain area to provide them services, but those who are actually living with and experiencing this, as Joanna mentioned, said that's not quite how this is going to work. I also wondered, because I don't believe there's a fiscal note associated with it, so there's no additional funding to provide those services. So I am skeptical, but that was the reasoning that was provided. Hopefully
there are homeless tents in Omaha. I mean, you can see them at Saddle Creek and Cummings, and definitely down at Francis House area.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Joanna. That was a good, I feel like you took the heavy bills.
Yeah.
You talking about them. I've got our last three. So, and I have dropped links in the chat for the bills we've talked about so far. I'll continue to do that. So this next one is LB 1368, which is one of the bills I found the most interesting and knew nothing about. And this is a great example of why I love our action teams. The bill is to adopt the Nitrogen Reduction Incentive Act. And our natural resources team, led by Claudia Stevenson, who's out in Ogallala, whose background is in land and water management type work, read this and said, this is a great bill. And so this is from Senator Ibach, and this is meant to provide the structure to help farmers learn how to use nitrogen in a way as a fertilizer that is as earth friendly as it can be. So different things as far as training farmers and knowledge sharing, some financial incentives for those who are able to implement this. And the letter we have on it is really fascinating. Claudia did a fantastic job of really walking through the science of why this is so important. This bill in particular has quite a few co-sponsors, and it's a mix of urban and rural and Democrat and Republican. So this is definitely one that could make a huge difference. And Senator Ibach herself is a more rural senator, so her community is supportive of this as well. So that's a really cool one. I have mentioned a couple times the letters that we've written. Joanna and I have talked about that in our follow-up. As I mentioned, Diane Bystrom has put together a fantastic resource that links to every single one of our letters. Once that is ready to go, we will send that out to everybody so you can read our position statements and all those different pieces there. So I am not going to talk more about the nitrogen bill for fear that I will butcher the science, but it is an excellent bill. There's a lot of support for it. Oh, and Terry says that she thinks there might be an OLLI course coming up that talks about nitrogen farming, and let us know because I would love to go to that and learn a little more. All right. Second to last bill that we're going to talk about is 1402. And 1402, and this one is interesting. So this is a bill from Senator Linehan that is to appropriate funds. The official title is to appropriate funds to the state treasurer for the purpose of providing grants to scholarship granting organizations. So let me put this into context. As many of you know, the league signed on to the Support Our Schools effort, which started last summer to repeal LB 753, which was called the Opportunity Scholarship Act. Not going to get into the weeds about that one. I'm betting a lot of people are already familiar, but basically it's a workaround to use public dollars towards private education in the form of scholarships. But it's quite complicated because our Constitution directly says you cannot do that. So it's done through a tax credit. At some other date, I would love to talk even more about that because I could get in the weeds about it. But that bill passed last spring after several years of Senator Linehan bringing it. It finally squeaked by last year, and almost immediately a coalition was built to repeal that effort, to put it on the ballot to the people. That effort was hugely successful. There was support from more than enough signatures collected in the different geographic regions needed to basically put that on the ballot in the fall to repeal 753. Since then, there have been several efforts led by Senator Linehan to remove that from the ballot on lots of different fronts. But this is a tandem effort she's making legislatively, that she's introduced this bill, the 1402, which is basically the scholarship bill again under a different bill number and title. The purpose being, if she can pass this, and then even if the people vote to repeal 753, the program itself still stands because it's under a different bill title and it's just a little bit different than last year. So the league very much opposes this for multiple reasons. Number one, we oppose public money going to private schools. The bill itself we interpret as unconstitutional, and that's been reaffirmed by a lot of other folks in the state who study the Constitution. And then on top of that, the element of even if folks disagreed with those pieces, the people should have the ability to decide that. And so trying to find a legislative workaround to people being able to use their voice is something that doesn't sit great with the league who loves democracy and the people's voice. So that is that bill. I will be interested to see where it is going. It has currently been put on general file. It is Senator Linehan's priority bill. So she's indicating at every turn that this is where she wants to put her efforts. It has yet to be scheduled yet. I don't know. I don't have a good read on if the speaker will be doing that. Again, we're now down to the is there time for all these bills to move forward? I'm pretty confident that if it did get scheduled, it would meet a filibuster, which would mean that they would need 33 votes as opposed to the 25 to keep moving it forward. So if this is of interest, definitely make sure you're signing up for our action alerts. I'll drop that link in a little bit later because this is one that we mobilize on pretty quickly. So yes, and Renee, thank you. Renee is who's commented in the chat, is one of our co-directors of education. She has shared a really great resource in the chat that is, if you want an email or a text when a certain bill moves, you can sign up on a bill tracker and you can register for a certain number. So you can't just say, tell me all the bills. As the action teams follow many more than the set limit. So we'll update you on all of them. But if you have a couple that are really important to you, that's a great place to go. Thank you, Renee. Really appreciate that. So Joanna, anything you would add about 14 or what? Yeah, 1402 while I drop it in the link here. Oh, you're muted. You're still muted. You're muted.
Joanna, we can't hear you. If you just press that unmute, there you go. We'll pause. You probably have something cogent to share with us.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
would just going to encourage Jenny, who was raising her hand, to put on the chat her question. There's a filibuster happening with Senator Dungan's Clean Slate program, where you get one chance to not have that put on your record. And Senator Slama has been filibustering it yesterday afternoon and this morning. It's a good bill, lots of support, but it's being filibustered.
It is. And I've been struck by how much pushback some of the bills on the floor have gotten. There was some hesitation for the aid bill that went with the funding bill that went along with a bill that Senator Frederickson had already introduced and it had moved forward. So I think the longer session goes on, the more we're going to see some of this breakdown. So Jenny asked if she could add something about 1402. I'm okay with that. Jenny, you want to add something there?
I'm Jenny Benson. I'm the president of the Nebraska State Education Association, as well as the president of Support Our Schools Nebraska. So we appreciate everybody's support. We are in the process of getting our talking points and our notebooks ready for the senators for 1402. Also, I put in the chat what our capital update is every week, and it's online and anybody can look at it. So that'll give you, we do capital updates every week, but we also do like action things like you're talking about. So once we get there, right now, this morning we met and we think that it won't be until the last week of March, but you never know. And so we are ready on a moment's notice, and we are going to need your help because right now we have probably 2 senators that, we lost by 1 vote last year. And so those 2 senators that we know are close to the edge, but we also know that there's a lot of what I would call shenanigans and shell games going on, and you scratch your back, I'll scratch you, whatever, that whole thing. So just, so you all know, I appreciate everybody's support. We are still moving forward as if we are going to be on the referendum. Nowhere in 1402 does it say at this point that they would repeal 753. She has talked about sunsetting 753, which is just a bunch of, again, shell game. So we are moving forward just to defeat 1402 as well, and move forward and take it to a vote. And we've had legal opinions, but you all know this will probably end up in court. That's what we know. We're happy the Secretary of State said I was right the first time, that I said this is going to a vote of the people. And I'm sure that really irritated some folks, but it would be hard for him to go back and say, I did it wrong. So We're just moving forward on defeating 1402.
Thank you, Jen. That's so
You
helpful.
bet.
Appreciate
Thank
it
you.
a
I
lot.
appreciate it.
All right, well, let's shift to our last bill that we're going to talk about, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions if there's other things that folks want to ask about or talk about. So our last one here is LR 282, and I'm going to drop it in the chat there. This one is really interesting and in the weeds, and it was an issue that I had no idea was going on until a few years ago. And this is related to a constitutional convention or a convention of states. There's some nuances about what those different things are, but ultimately what this is Senator Lippincott has brought a bill asking that Nebraska sign on as one of the states who's calling for a convention of the states to add an amendment to the Constitution. So if you think about backing up and remembering back to civics, 101 back in high school, there are two main ways to amend our national constitution. One is through, legislation that's passed that's then all the a certain number of states say, yes, we want to do this. That's how the ERA has not currently been adopted because we're 1 or 2 states short. But that started with legislation. The other way is for states to get together in a convention and basically say, hey, Congress, you're going to do this, and put together an amendment to amend the Constitution. This particular one that Senator Lippincott's bringing, the 282 LR, it's a legislative resolution, not a legislative bill. So if you're searching, make sure you click the little LR button in the search box. This is specifically to limit the number of terms on the national level. So the league is opposed to this for 2 reasons. First of all, we don't support term limits. And as we've seen in our state legislature, there's actually some really negative impact since we've had term limits, some institutional knowledge that's lost. It also philosophically restricts the people from being able to vote for the candidate they would like to vote for. So that's step one. Step two is this is part of a larger Convention of States Constitutional Convention effort that is really trying to get enough states to sign on to basically have the states send people from all of the different states to a convention to be able to amend the Constitution. The problem is that there are no rules. And so a lot of scholarship has been done about how this would work or how it is not clear how this would work and the potential for basically just rewriting our national constitution if this type of thing is called. There's also no clarity about who are these delegates that are attending, who decides, who has ultimate say. So if these group of states get together and they do come up with something different, can Congress, can the Supreme Court step in and say no? It's basically really just totally new territory. We've had one convention of states before, and it was when we threw out our very first draft of the Articles of Confederation and came up with our current Constitution. So from that level, from the bigger issue standpoint, this is kind of a dangerous game to play right now, especially with how polarized and in flux things are on the national political level. So that's a lot to go with just a tiny bill, but that is why we're in opposition to this LR. I will also just earmark that there's another LR. I want to say it's 31. Let's see if my memory is good. It's probably not. Haha, it is. All right, LR 31, which is from Senator Halloran, which was introduced last session. He's prioritized this. And what this is basically last year they passed a compromise LR that said, hey, we'll sign up to be on a Constitution of States, but only for the next, I think it was 5 years, and then it would sunset. This one is saying, hey, yeah, let's pull that back and instead sign up and put no sunset on. And so we've just signed on forever and always for whatever reason to be part of a convention of states. So scary, wild stuff. Again, in a follow-up, I'll try to share some resources if you want to read more about it. But that is one we're keeping an eye on. I don't get the sense that Lippincott's is going to move much. So that was the first one I talked about that was just about term limits. Senator Halloran's might. So that's the one that's just broadly saying forever and always we're open to getting together as states to add amendments or rewrite the Constitution. I sound hyperbolic, but I promise I'm not. This is really what scholars who study in this work have found. So, all right. Joanna and I have talked a lot, me more than Joanna, as is usually the case. I would love to answer questions. If there are specific bills that we didn't cover that you would like to get our sense on, if there are bills that we've talked about that you have questions about, I'd love to give some space for that. So anything you want to add, Joanna, while we're letting people add any questions they might have?
I don't. No, it's down to the wire. I mean, the last day of the session is the 28th. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's
So
yeah, it's coming. We're
Yeah.
past halfway.
Thanks to both of you. While people are thinking of some possible questions to type into the chat, please know I will read those as they pop up. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Maybe while we're waiting for some questions to roll in, share a little bit about your best recommendations for how we might take action on our own as citizens. You've given us a good number of legislative bills and resolutions that we're looking at. If you want to weigh in on supporting or not, just some quick tips for us. Thank you.
Thank you. That was perfect. I just dropped the link for our action alerts in the chat. And again, we'll follow up via email. So yes, there are tons of bills that are following. The first thing I would say is find what's interesting to you. There, as Jenny mentioned from NSEA, there are lots of different areas. If you're really passionate about environment, then I would say sign up for Sierra Club's action alerts, because that's really they're watching this kind of like we are on the action teams every day. And they'll tell you when you need to be engaged, because everyone has lives and jobs and can't necessarily live stream the legislature all the time. We'd love for you to sign up for our action alerts, because we do cover that really broad swath of all types of bills. And I've dropped that link in there. That's one way. You'll get an email alert when there's action that needs to be taken. It usually tells you exactly who, is it your senator? Is it this group of senators? Is it this committee? And what the ask is. I also try really hard to include context because, we want you to advocate on behalf of yourself as a Nebraskan, and we want you to do it in an informed way. So we don't just want you to parrot our talking points. We want you to know what's actually going on. So I always include some resources there as well. If you want to do even more than that, you are more than welcome to join one of our action teams. We have 6 different areas. Let's see if I can name them all. Let's see. Disability and behavioral health, healthcare, natural resources, government, social policy, and education. Oh, I'm getting good at that. Okay. So thanks, Joanna. So those are our 6 different areas. The work on those is usually busiest in January and February when session starts. Although some of our teams are busy throughout the year, like education has done a lot of work on the ballot initiative. So that form I included, you can also sign up there as well. So those are the big ones, I would say. Another thing is just live streaming the legislature, staying up with what's happening via the Nebraska Examiner is a fantastic resource that really focuses on legislative issues in Nebraska. Really helpful. And then finally, people kind of laugh when I say this, but talk to friends and family. I found that, I'm live streaming the legislature, so it's on my mind, but I'll bring it up to friends and family, and they have no idea that some of these things are going on. So even just mentioning, hey, I heard this bill, or sharing an article occasionally can make really honestly a huge difference. So those are a couple of things that come to mind for me. Joanna, is there anything you would add?
Well, I just wanted people to notice in the chat, Diane Bystrom has listed all the priority bills with a link to the bill itself. And I would encourage all of you to go to that link and save it. It's very valuable.
Yeah.
The thing I would talk about voter ID was kind of the issue that I worked hardest on last year. And they are through the Secretary of State, there's a full-time person who will be helping with help people understanding how to get a voter ID for the first time. A state ID, it's called, not a voter ID, state ID. And in Omaha, for instance, there's only 2 locations. You either go to North 57th or to 170th and Burt. It's not as easy, you know, there used to be DMVs connected with the treasurer's office. That's no longer. So there's only 2 places in town. And, you know, there's phone numbers that are on a flyer, and they'll be promoting it more where you call and get help to do it, to get that ID. It's not simple for women, because let's say you were married, you've got your certified birth certificate, then you need your certified marriage certificate to show why your name changed. And then if you divorced and went back to your old name, then you'd need a certified divorce certificate. It's very expensive at $17 a certificate. But there's an organization, kind of a national organization, who's trying to fight the voter ID barriers called Ghostwriters, and they will provide money to help you pay for those out-of-state IDs, out-of-state certificates, certified certificates that you need. So it's, you know, it's still going to be a challenge, but I think the Secretary of State and the Coalition of Nebraska, the Voting Rights Coalition, they've really are coordinating and collaborating in a very effective manner, in a hopeful way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much to
Joanna,
keep track of. Oh, sorry.
I
I'm
was-
going to, in the few minutes we have left, I do want to honor those who put questions in the chat and get to some of those. Here's a question from a ways back. What does Senator McDonald want his bill to do? That's 1357.
Yeah, so that was his reasoning when he introduced it, was he wanted individuals who are unhoused to be moved to certain areas for access to resources, was part of it. The other portion was, he said, in protection of businesses and I don't know how to say this politely, the way our city feels, and not having to see unhoused people. So those were kind of the two areas he talked about.
Okay. Here's a comment from a participant today indicating LB 1368 provides incentives to farmers to use less nitrogen. Payments always seem to resonate with farmers. Just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So many good links in the chat today. Here's a question about Dungan's bill concerning certain people who get eviction notices. Just want to confirm that that is definitely the one we were talking about earlier.
Yes, so that's the one that I'm not sure if they're going through lunch, but has been filibustered yesterday and today. It has a couple different pieces, but it is about, for example, if someone is accused is not the right word, but is filed for eviction and then that's dismissed. Currently, that still shows up on their record. So this is saying that that would not show up on their record. There's a couple other pieces that it does too, as if a tenant wants a jury trial, they can request that for an eviction hearing. So yes, that is what we're talking about right now, and it is being filibustered.
All right, thank you. Next question. How and when does a special session occur?
Oh, a special session. So the context of this is the governor has made statements to the effect of, if we don't get property tax relief figured out before the end of session, I'm calling special session until it's done. Special sessions can get called one of two ways. The governor can either say, we're doing a special session and have everyone come back. The other way is enough senators can get together and say, we'd like to do a special session, and they don't need the governor's permission. Special sessions are rare. We used them last for redistricting because there was delays in the census and we needed to have them done in a certain amount of time. There was talk of having one about the abortion ban once Roe was overturned, but the governor did the math and realized he didn't have the votes, and so didn't call one at that time. So that is how and when a special session happens.
Right.
And I should say special sessions can only be one topic. You have to say when you're calling the session, this is what this is for, so it can't go rogue.
Okay, we're learning lots today. Thanks to both of you. Here's another question. What's going on with the death penalty bill?
So there are, and Joanna, feel free to jump in if you'd like, there are two death penalty related bills that come to mind. One is Senator Lippincotts that would expand the ways that the state can kill people. And that one was heard on the last day of hearings, and it's still in committee. I don't think it's going to move anywhere. The other one was from Senator McKinney, and it was to put the vote to the people again of if the death penalty should exist in Nebraska. And that one was voted on in committee, but not moved out. So it's kind of stalled for now. I don't think we'll see any action on it this session.
Okay, we do have some other questions to get to, but I want to let you all know that the first Thursday from noon to 1 is when we hold our lunch and learn sessions. Our April program is being finalized, but you can count on another topic that's going to be of interest to many of us. Our May program, we do have set up. That'll be focused on summer meal programs for children in Nebraska. One other quick mention before people log off. The local Lincoln League here in Lincoln-Lancaster County is working on a plan to merge our education fund, that's our 501c4 arm, into our regular league. So information on the merger is going to be mailed to people who are members here in a couple weeks. We're anticipating that a vote will be taken on this at our annual meeting. If you have questions on this proposed merger, please contact our local president, Cynthia Peterson, and her email address is llpresident@lincolnleague.org. Thanks everybody for listening. Here's a question. Can you say who the two senators are who are on the fence about LB 1402?
I see that Jenny had said no, not at this point. So I defer to Jenny.
Very good, very good.
Is that good enough? I mean, we're just working behind the scenes, and when we're ready to blow it up, you will be among the first to hear.
Okay. All right. Thanks again for being with us, Jenny. Here's a question. It's an insider one, but a good one. So here's about what we should do on our own. Should we just contact our own senator? Are there times in particular when we should contact many senators? And if so, how would we know when those times are here?
Great question. Contacting your own senator is always a fantastic idea, and you can do it at any time. It's probably going to resonate the most when they are either hearing a bill on the floor, again, because there's so many. Sometimes they're not thinking about a bill until it's right in front of them. So it's going to resonate the most then, or when they're hearing it in a committee. So your senator is always great. Some people will say, my senator never responds. My senator's does respond and they're not nice. Keep emailing them. It's literally their job. And I would also encourage folks to, when I feel like I'm not getting heard that way, I will sometimes CC the bill I'm talking about, the introducer, so I know that someone is seeing that message is being sent. So that's your own senator. Other senators, it kind of depends on what's happening in the session. Sometimes it's great to, after like a hearing, to email a whole group, a whole committee, and just tell them where you stand, or share some information. Sometimes it's listening to folks like Jenny or other folks who say, hey, these are the two senators who need to hear from people. And that's information that we get from working with our other advocacy groups. So we share that in action alerts when we can. Sometimes it's just if a senator says something. My husband's a pediatrician, and Senator Reapy had said something that resonated with him, and he sent him a note and got a nice, like, hey, that's helpful information back. So you can email whoever you want. There's some times when it's more salient. Sign up for action alerts, and also anyone can email me at any time, and I'm happy to give direct advice. I'm sorry, I'm talking fast.
It's all in there. It'll be part of the record. Here's our last question, I believe. Oh, sorry, Joanna, you had some remarks. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that there is a great communication between all the nonprofits in the state of Nebraska through the Nebraska Table for Civic Engagement. And I know there's over 50 organizations, and we share information. So it's a much more coordinated response. And somebody, I think it was the governor, called us the nonprofit industrial complex. Because all of a sudden there's really organized and factual information shared that we provide at hearings.
That's when I love to remind people that we're an entirely, except for one staff person, volunteer group. So
Mhm. Exactly. Well, I want to thank Joanna and Rachel for sharing a ton of great information today. I also want to thank you for the work you do all year long, bringing people together, researching the issues, coming up with the policy positions. Let's just end with one more question, and that's any idea how much a special session would cost the taxpayers?
oh heavens, I don't know a dollar number. I should look that up, but it's not cheap. Because if you think about, we're not just paying for the senators to be there. There's also the reimbursement for them to be there, the staff to be there. When we talk about the cost saving of a potential tax plan, reduction of property taxes, I bet we would easily spend whatever they figured out how to save in the year. So not the best use of resources, in my opinion, but that's my 2 cents.
Great. This has been a wonderful program today. I want to thank again Joanna and Rachel for sharing a good deal of information for us. We'll hope to see you all next month, the first Thursday of the month. So for now, we're adjourned. Thanks to all. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.